Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I'm here today to do my Friday Reads video where I recap the week in reading and any other interesting things that have happened since the last Friday Reads that I did. The biggest thing that happened this week is that I was, of course, really excited about the Academy Awards. If you follow along, you know that. I mentioned it in my last Friday Reads video and have mentioned it in a bunch of other videos. So I watched on Sunday, and now everybody's been talking about it, and it just wasn't a very enjoyable show. It felt rushed. It didn't feel like it had a lot of respect for the movies. Like, there were jokes about the power of the dog and how, if it was boring and things like that. And then, of course, there's the Will Smith thing, which I don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about here and won't. But it was just gross. On both sides. What Will Smith did was really gross, and the thing that Chris Rock said was gross. So it just put this sort of rancid cherry on top of a show that was already not great and all that enjoyable, which is a shame because there were good movies and performances this past year that we could have celebrated. And that's all I will really say about that. What I will say is that we managed to watch two of the movies that had been nominated for live action documentary short, and they were both really great. The first one was Audible, which is on Netflix. So if you have Netflix in the United States, you can watch it. It is about a football team at a school for the deaf in Maryland. It focuses particularly on one of the players, but you do get to meet a bunch of the others. They talk about a friend of theirs who had committed suicide because of bullying. It's really good. We watched that one first and immediately thought to ourselves, well, this one didn't win. The documentary that won should be really good. So we watched that one because it's available on YouTube. So if you are watching this video, you are already on the platform that will let you watch The Queen of Basketball. I'll put a link to it in the description box down below. I highly recommend it because then we watched that and it was a delight. It is about Lucy Harris, who was a basketball player when she was in high school and then went on to compete in college because of Title IX, because Title IX meant that schools had to create equal sports opportunities for women. So she was able to play. She was the only Black woman on her team, and she was a phenomenal player. She scored the very first basket in a women's basketball game at the Olympics, but of course didn't really have any opportunity to continue her basketball career afterwards. And she is quite a personality, and she talks pretty directly to the camera. And I would definitely recommend it. It's only 22 minutes of your time. And again, I will put a link to that in the description box down below. So I'm choosing to focus on those things coming out of the Oscars instead of the show, which was largely a mess. There were some really beautiful moments. I said I wasn't really going to talk about the show, and here I go. But I want to focus on the positive moments. I thought Troy Kotsur's win for Coda was beautiful and deserved. But also because Ye Jung-yoon, who presented the award, was clearly so excited to give him the award. She had learned how to sign his name, and when he came up, she took the trophy so he would be able to sign his speech. And somebody joked the next day that she should win Best Supporting Actress for her role in that speech, and I would really agree with that. And of course, there was the really sweet moment with Lady Gaga and Liza Minnelli at the end. And Ariana DeBose had a record-breaking win. She is the first openly queer person to win an acting prize, and that is fantastic. So I'm going to focus on the positive things that came out of the ceremony, and I just really hope that they do better next year, or at least that the ceremony is not much of a mess. It is April, which means two things. I'm filming this on April 1st, and I am not a fan of April Fool's Day at all. It's one of my least favorite things. I hate April Fool's Day jokes, but largely because a lot of them, well, we don't need to go into why. I am just not a person who really likes pranking people. Never have been. Even as a child, I was not a fan of Curious George because he was a rule breaker. I would get really upset. I remember my mother reading me a Curious George book as a kid, and I got mad and took the book and threw it down on the table and was like, the man in the yellow hat told him not to do that. That is my vibe as a kid. And I hated the Cat in the Hat because he made a mess of their house. So that, again, was my vibe as a kid. And you can imagine as a result that I am not a fan of April Fools. But April does have two good things. It is National Poetry Month. I have a plan to read a poetry book this year. I'm probably going to be listening to it on audio at some point, but I'm going to keep it low-key about what it is because I want to wait and make sure I actually get to it this month. But if you have plans for National Poetry Month, let me know what they are in the comment section down below. This is also Aussie April. I'm going to have a harder time trying to fit in an Aussie book this month, but I would like to. I have participated in Aussie April the last 2 years, maybe 3. So I would love it if I managed to get something in. But with everything on my plate right now, it's not looking extremely likely that I will. So help me out. If you are going to be reading something for Aussie April, let me know what it is in the comment section down below. I am hoping that if I manage to get something in, it will be Inland Sea by Madeline Watts, which was something that I wanted to read last year and did not get around to. But we'll see how everything goes. And having said that, I think that's everything that went on this week, other than just the weather where I live has been full on insane. It's like we're trying to move into spring, but we can't really get there, which is really annoying. It was absolutely gorgeous on Saturday. Lovely day. I even put on shorts for the first time and was walking around in a t-shirt and shorts, and it was a delight. And then Sunday started to get colder, and then it was freezing all week. And now here I am filming this on a Friday wearing a heavy flannel shirt, although the sun did come out, so maybe that means we're going to have nicer weather again this weekend. But hopefully spring is coming. I am okay with cold for the most part if it's winter, but when it's just cold and not snowing or anything like that, I'm ready to leave it behind and move on into spring. But hopefully that's the direction we are. I mean, obviously that is the direction we're moving on because the calendar is what the calendar is, but it would be nice to feel spring. And that's really been the only other thing going on this week. Otherwise, it's been relatively quiet. Let's get to the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. I did not actually finish a book this week. I have my first DNF of the year to talk about, and I came this close to finishing a book. Let's talk about the DNF first. I mentioned it in my March reading wrap-up, and I went through a lot of the reasons about why it became a DNF, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it here. If you want to check out my March wrap-up and you haven't already, I'll put a link to it in the description box down below. But it was The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, which was a bit of a surprise. And it's not that I didn't like the book. This is kind of a circumstantial DNF, which is an interesting way of phrasing it. I will explain. So I was listening to this on audio. I had been on hold for it on Libby for a long time, and it came available. I was listening to it, and I was enjoying it. It was fine. I love Louise Erdrich's narration, but I was only okay on the book itself. And maybe because I was only okay on it, I wasn't hurrying my way through it. And also because I like her voice, I was listening to it at normal speed. I don't really speed up audiobooks in the first place. I don't like to. And if I do, I don't speed them up very much. But with her voice, I love the cadence of it. That's one of the things I really like about it. So I kept it at normal speed, which means I guess I was taking my time through the book. So I realized on Tuesday, I think it was, that the book was due back that day. And I had a little over 2 hours, I think, left. And I thought about trying to push my way through those last 2 hours, like speeding up the audio and just going. And I thought to myself, do I really want to do that? Should I just let it go? And I just let it go. So the reason I think it's a DNF is that I got back on the hold list on Libby, but it's 24 weeks. I'll stay on the hold list for now, but the likelihood is I'm not invested enough in the book to wait that long and dive back into the ending. So the reason it's a circumstantial DNF is that if it hadn't been due back, I would have finished the book. If it was only a week or so to finish the book, I would. But the fact that I had to return it and let it go, and that it's going to be 24 weeks, I don't think I feel any sense of urgency to get back into this world. Somebody did comment that there's an emotional payoff at the end of the book. I can see how that would happen. I just don't feel really invested in anything that was going on. And I kind of actively didn't like the part of the book that was dealing with the pandemic. I feel like it's not doing anything that makes it feel worthwhile to spend all of that time with the pandemic, because it feels like living regular life, and regular life is already a lot in that regard. So probably better to just leave it alone. So those are the circumstances of the DNF. If you want to hear more about the experience I had reading it and the thoughts I had leading up to the point where I left off, check out the March wrap up that is linked down below. It's not a bad book. I just thought it was only fine. And that's how it became a sort of circumstantial DNF. And then the book that I came really close to finishing is Violets by Kyung-Sook Shin, which is translated by Anton, her. I actually managed to read a fair amount of this book during the week. It's one of those things where once if I have the time to sit down and pick it up and don't feel distracted, it's really easy to get pulled along into the book. The trouble a lot of the time for me is finding the time to really sit down with a book and not be distracted. And once I allowed myself to be in that space, it was really easy to get carried away with the book. I think I have about 50 pages left, and I was hoping that I would be able to sit down, have breakfast, and get through at least a good chunk of the 50 pages before I started my workday. And then maybe I'd be able to cram in a couple of pages if I was close by then. But the morning got away from me, and the workday has gotten away from me. So I still have about 50 pages left. Really close to being done. I'll talk more about the book when I finish. It makes some surprising movements in the last few, 50 to 100 pages of the book. So I mentioned last week that the first chapter is almost like a short story. It takes place when the protagonist named San is a child, and it deals with her family and her relationship with her mother and this friendship she has with another girl, and the way things go down with her mother and her mother's family, but particularly with that friend, kind of leave San traumatized, or at least it has repercussions that go through the rest of her life. The next chapter, she is an adult. She's about 23 years old. She gets a job in a flower shop, and she has this very quiet life, very solitary life. She doesn't challenge things a lot. She has this landlord who raises her rent because she wants to buy her daughter a piano, and she pushes back a little bit, but then just lets it happen. That's kind of her life to a degree. And over the course of the book, she makes another friend style relationship with a woman who works with her in the flower shop. She has a man who is sort of romantically interested in her. The description of the book kind of puts the relationship with the man at the forefront, and I was a bit surprised that I'm almost done with the book and it hasn't really come to a head yet. I'm sure a lot is going to happen in this last part of the book to tie a lot of these loose ends together, and I can't wait to see how they all work. But it's also interesting that the book sort of makes these movements in the last 50 to 100 pages where it almost starts to play with the form in unexpected ways, because the voice that is telling this story to you all of a sudden starts to say things like, well, she didn't know that in 10 minutes things were really going to change. And usually I don't like it when a writer does something like that, because it almost feels like teasing you. But the way Kyung-Sook Shin does it actually made me curious, oh, what's going to happen in 10 minutes? How is this going to change? And she does a lot of interesting things with the character of San. I won't say I love the book. There's potential that the ending will get me there, I guess, but I am enjoying the book, and I'm glad that I am reading it. This is something I am reading. I have an e-galley of. So this is releasing in April. Let me see if I can tell you exactly what day it will be coming out. Violets is being released on April 12th. So you can look forward to that. Maybe if you're interested, pre-order it with your bookstore. It's a little close at this point, but definitely check it out. I have read 2 other books by Kyung-Sook Shin. I really liked Please Look After Mom a lot. That was a really great book. The other one I read was The Court Dancer, which I thought was good. Didn't love it, but thought it was good. And Violets is another success. So I would recommend that. And I've heard a lot of great things about other books that Anton has translated. I believe the only ones that I have read have been Kyung-Sook Shin's books. So those are the two books that I had worked on. The Sentence was what I had been listening to on audio, and I haven't started another audio. I was granted access to Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead on audio through Libby on Wednesday, and I haven't started it yet. I actually spent a lot of time catching up on some podcasts that I had fallen behind on, and now I'm hoping that today I will be able to start diving into Great Circle, because that is a book I am very much looking forward to. Heard a lot of really great things. It was a finalist for the Booker Prize, and it was just all over the place last year. So I'm really looking forward to finally getting around to reading it for myself. I haven't even started it yet, so I need to get going on that. That will be my next audiobook. And I decided my next book. If you watched my March wrap up and my April plans, the plans part was a little bit up in the air. I decided that I really need to focus on Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois next, once I finish Violets. So after I get to that last 50 pages, this is the book I'm going to start working on, because it's going to be due back at the library, and it is a properly chunky book. So I need to start trying to make my way through this. So rather than dive into The Candy House by Jennifer Egan, which I have from NetGalley, I want to try to make sure I get this before it is due back at the library. And Candy House, I wanted to get to before it was released, and it is going to be released on April 5th. So that is no longer going to happen. It's fine. It'll be fine. I wanted to read this before the Pulitzer announcement anyway, just in case it won, because it is my prediction for the Pulitzer Prize. And if you haven't seen that video, I would recommend checking it out. I'll put a link to it in the description box down below as well. So I'm going to finish Violets, hopefully today, and then I will move on to the Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. I'm going to start The Great Circle. I had mentioned in my last Friday Reads video that I was hoping I would release my Gone with the Wind video, my Pulitzer Prize deep dive for that at long last. I ended up working on the post about it that's going to be a companion to it more this week, and that delayed it a little bit. So it's still coming, hopefully next week. So once again, the lesson here is I should just not make promises about when I'm going to manage to film and release a video, but it's still coming. I have just been thinking about what I want to say in it a lot, but it is still coming. That will hopefully be next week. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, I think that's about it for this week's Friday Reads video. If you would like to tell me what you've been up to and reading and watching, what you thought of the Oscars, let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.